morning and welcome. We are so happy to have all of you here with us. I am LaDonna Innaking, and I am the breathing and myofunctional facilitator with My Village Pediatric Orthodontics. Now, if I may introduce to you the person responsible for putting all of this together. A man that I often joke has been on a plane headed to a course for 8 years straight. His quest for knowledge is immense, and he is very gracious in that he shares that knowledge with his entire staff. And those of you who have seen him at courses know it's not unusual to see 2, if not 3 staff members sitting with him. He has been so gracious to train us, and I really feel like it sets our office apart in a way that every single member of our team not only understands and has a full understanding of the techniques we use, but every single member of our team can implement those. It's been a wonderful journey with him as we've started this interceptive orthodontic practice over 6 years ago. Oh, I'm sorry, we're well into our 6th year. He's been at it for 8. Seeing the positive changes in these children's lives, it's just been life-changing, I know, for me. My background in dental and orthodontics, in the 30 years that I've been involved in that, this has been the highlight for me. And so I do appreciate that. If I may introduce to you my mentor and friend, Dr. Bill Mahon.
Thanks, LaDonna. From her, you can see that the saying that every good doctor has behind him a really great staff. And I did make a typo on their name tags because I think it says assistants and different things like that, but I usually describe them as partners. And every case that we've got, we're talking back and forth all the time, and it's almost like having orthodontic or dental partners in the practice with me. These techniques that we're going to talk about today, in my humble opinion, are really much more taxing and difficult than the ones I had for 30 years in regular orthodontics. And the reason is because every time a patient comes in, you have to completely re-diagnose that case. Sometimes we change treatment plans, sometimes we maintain the treatment plan, sometimes they take longer than we thought, sometimes they finish early. But unlike my conventional orthodontics, where let's say you're going 2 years, at the end of that 2-year period, you put maybe a lingual 3-3 on, you give them an Essex retainer, and that's it. That may be the best that they ever look, because you're probably familiar with something called relapse. These cases are really different because I don't really know when to say they're going into retention. And the reason is because as myofunction continues to improve and they get it and they breathe correctly, these cases seen a year later look much better than they did when we put them in retention. So the thought is that they need much less retention, if any, if they're doing all the things that we taught them correctly. And I think that's the thing that separates this from what I did for so many years. I loved orthodontics. I really, really loved this. But my CV is in front of you, and it's these albums that you've got that we've accumulated over the past 3 to 5 years. And the interesting thing is that all of these cases were treated without braces. I still utilize braces, but it's more an end-stage thing if we haven't reached perfection, which in America we love to have a picket fence. So we're more than happy to give that to people. But it might be 3 months or 6 months. It's not 2 or 3 years. And by the time we get there, the teeth, the myofunction is pretty much correct, and breathing is normalized nasal breathing. So you look at the pictures, and if you're an orthodontist or somebody who does teeth straightening, you'll see galleries and before and after and everything, but that's not the story. How do you grade these cases if you're doing peer review? It's really difficult because you have no idea what my goals were. Extremely humbling to hear what parents have to say. But this is the proof of the pudding right here When moms tell you that they don't snore anymore, that they're doing this, they're doing better in school, they've decreased their medications from their pediatricians, their attention is better, their focus is better at school, all of these things that we look for, they're breathing through their nose, they're not snoring at night, if I didn't already say that. These are health issues. And sometimes LaDonna and I will get through a new patient interview and I will not have mentioned teeth one time because we're really more about health. So we still call it orthodontics, but it's a lot more than straight teeth. It is a new area for most of us, myofascial. For me also, we've probably done maybe 2,500 Freedom releases in my office in the last 5 years. And I really hesitated to say anything back here because I wanted to hear what you all had to say, and I learned a lot from that. I even learned a lot from my own assistant that assists me in surgery because I hadn't heard her comments about the alveolar spread that I used to release it all. Is she here? She moved. I used to release those all the time, and then I noticed when they came back, it was usually relaxed. So there's probably more reason to do that now than, I don't know. It's all uncharted territory. But at any rate, so I was trained by Larry Cutlaw, who I told Rohan, I said, please don't get in the same room with him because you guys wouldn't get along at all concerning scar tissue and stuff, because I really rarely see that in laser surgery. I rarely see that. If I've done a frenectomy on a child, if it's an orthodontic age child, and the mom and I are talking in the clinic, and they're referring to that, and I go, oh yeah, did we do one? And they've got normal tongue function. I can't see any signs that I did a frenectomy, and that was yesterday or before. So I think that laser surgery is really a good option. But I also really appreciate some of the stuff I saw with using sutures on the older kids for sure. The diode laser that I used to use, it was good. It was the first generation, and it works. It's chromophilic, so it works primarily in attraction to reds and blood. But when we're talking freenums, we're talking tendons, and you're talking white tissue. So I needed something that was not chromophilic. It didn't really help. The CO2 laser that we use is really good because it's hydrophilic. Mm-hmm. So my assistant, if it's either Stacy or Amy, will just dress that frenum where I want to do the surgery and moisten it, and then it cuts by ablation. So it's very clean. I rarely see any bleeding at all. As I was talking with Jeff about, it doesn't have a guided light to show me where I am, but I'm so familiar with how it cuts and where it cuts, and we keep the kids still enough that I feel very comfortable using it. So I would love to have a light, like I've seen at Soleil and some of the others, but I find that with experience I don't need it. But one of the reasons that that I really wanted Valerie was because maybe 5% of our infant surgeries are not what I want. I don't get the result that I want. And a lot of that turns out they're myofascially involved. So having Stacy on board now with good myofascial experience and training, my hope is that we can know which children to avoid completely, which to put on recall for a week or two because we give them exercises to stretch that so that all I see is that nice, beautiful frenum, and we're still convinced that it's needed. So Allison Hazelbaker, which many of us heard in Chicago, really woke me up to the fact that maybe we don't need to do as many as we're doing. So I don't look at frenectomies as a fad because I see too many moms that are converted from frustrated moms that are going to go in the bottle if it keeps up, or failure to thrive kids that we'll do immediately when we see them. So I know that there's benefit, but I just need to know when to cut back. We're also connected on different levels than that. So if you hear her talk about alpha and stuff and you know nothing about it, just file it, Google it, and only believe the good things about it because I think it will also be a treatment for us orthodontists and general dentists and pediatric dentists of the future. but it's not really, it's a little bit under the radar right now. As it becomes more and more prevalent and useful, we use it with MRC appliances. I use it myself with a B1 at night. Mm-hmm. And honestly, it's got a lot of potential. So just be open-minded about that. Something very strange has happened in our nation's health over the last 200 years, and it can't be explained by genetic mutations in this shorter period of time. Is it the environment? Is it nutrition? Is it the way we breathe? Is it modern technology? Or is it the soil? What is it? What's going on? Why is it that the U.S. ranks 37th or worse in World Health Ranking, yet our health care spending is number one in the world? It's over $7,000 for every man, woman, and child. Why is there an obesity epidemic in our kids? Why is it that some now estimate that by 2025, over 50% of the children born in this country will develop some level of autism? That for the first time in history, our children can expect to have a shorter lifespan than their parents? Why is it that so many of my orthodontic patients are on medications for ADD, ADHD, autism, oppositional defiance syndromes, and other behavioral problems? And why is it that we're primarily a nation that treats symptoms rather than causes, and addressing those causes and learning how to correct them? It's a puzzle, and that's why I chose the logo that you've seen on the correspondences. It's a puzzle that needs to be solved. And I think we have the tools now that we can do that. Putting the puzzle together is a daunting task, like Barry said, but we have some great minds that are at work on this right now, and anything that I've done or been able to learn is because we stand on shoulders of real giants. And one of them is Kevin Boyd. I've known Kevin for 2 or 3 years. I've heard him speak a number of times. He's a nutritionist. He's an anthropologist. He's a superb pediatric dentist. And he's a very deep thinker. And he's a good friend. And I count him as one of my mentors in this struggle to come up with ways to help kids. Is a desire to make kids healthier. And if you start out from that premise and none other, that's all you really need. There was an online 7-series video that Joe Mercola did several months ago. And in that presentation, there were numerous snippets by an endocrinologist. I think we determined he's from Indiana, is that? Virginia. Where? Virginia. Zach Bush. If you've never heard of him, you need to Google him and read. He's an endocrinologist, has an obesity clinic, and he basically is an amazing person in nutrition also. I got to the end of that 7 episode sequence and was so taken by what he had to say that I just transcribed it all. And Pete, if you'll put it up here, because this to me segues completely with what Darius is saying and why I think the success that we've had in our practice, what it's due to, is not the technique, it's not the appliance, it's not only the people, but he made a statement that we can change biology in an instant by changing the environment around a human being. And that's why our clinic, I think, is successful. It doesn't come down to one supplement, one cool technology, or one thing that I tell my patients. This is a statement. We hold space. And when you do that, you hold space for everyone that walks in that door, the patient, the parent. It's a culture. We are very particular about the patients that we accept in our our practice. We want the whole family to be involved in this. And sometimes it's the extended family as well. And he talks about that in his quote later on. The healing never comes from the doctor. The healing always comes from the patient. And that healing process is so inspirational, not just for the doctors who get to witness it, but for every other person who would witness those in the community. So we don't have everybody here from Arkansas. We don't have everybody here that really needs to be here. But we do have, I think, what I think is the most important people. So it's now your duty to go out and talk to your friends and your colleagues about what you learned this weekend. And wherever they can take these courses, they may have to fly like I have all over the world to hear these guys. It's worth it. It's expensive. You don't get it in school. But I can assure you that it will change your life, but more importantly, it'll change the lives of your kids. Why we're giving this is because I Googled the demography of my area, and we've got 84,000 children K to 12. Yesterday and the day before, they talked about 90% of these kids need something. Well, I can guarantee you that half of them need everything that we've got. So in our clinic, we can treat maybe 300, 350. That leaves an awful lot of kids that are sick. And if we don't do something about it, they're going to grow up sick. They're going to grow up with the same bad habits that their parents have helped them to have, and their children are going to be sick. So this is a daunting task that everybody should take very, very seriously, because you can make a difference in every single child that you work with. But I don't think it requires seeing 1,000 patients. You can't do it. You need to spend time with them. Every time they come in, we're building these kids up. We're telling them how great they look. We're telling them how wonderful they're cooperating, how much better they might get results if they do this or that. And the parents are sitting right there every time. It's very unlike the practice I used to have, where they drop them off, they pay you, they say, straighten their teeth, and then they come back from shopping and pick them up. This is an extremely different practice than I've ever had, and that's why it's so enjoyable. Those comments that you read in the front of our album were just parents sitting on the bench while we're working with their kids, talking with us and writing down. The reason we brought MRC was because I just think they've got a really superior product that is good for you maybe to start with or to incorporate in what you're doing. Their techniques and their supply of applications and help aid are without precedence in the orthodontic industry. So if anybody would like to trade their tuition for what may be the bottom line on this conference, I would be more than happy to talk to you about that. But it's been worth it, because I can't do this forever. It's up to you all to carry on from here.